How you doing, everybody? Hope you are all keeping well and safe. Cracking episode for you today. I've got Stephen Smith on, who played for Rangers, currently coaching at Rangers as well, talking about his career from school age right through to the coaching he's doing now. Some brilliant stories and some really great bits in there for any young kids in the game. Give us your feedback, any comments on it are always appreciated. Big thanks to Paul at Let Me Repair for the continued sponsorship. Any sort of electrical repairs you need, give them a shout and get them on their website or the socials. Cheers, guys. Stephen, thank you for coming on, mate. This is my transfer deadline deal of January so far. I know you're a busy man, so it's appreciated. First thing I want to ask you, obviously, we'll go through your career in detail, but what was Stephen Smith like at school?
I wasn't bad at school.
Aye.
I actually think I was really good in school until I hit that secondary school phase. And first and second year I was alright, and then I didn't become a bad kid or anything. I just realised that all I wanted to do was play football.
Aye.
So I wouldn't say I became lazy at school either, but the school work get pushed to the side, and I just was focused on playing football. That was all it was ever about for me, and I was lucky, because if it didn't work out, then it wouldn't have been a different story. So I was quite fortunate that it did. As I say, I was quite intelligent, but it just became that word obsession, but I was just so focused on being a footballer that the school work wasn't for me.
Aye. And did you get how was your teachers that way? Because you let a lot of boys in that age, and teachers are like, that isn't a realistic.
Aye. I had a few teachers say that to me. But again, you just don't listen, really, do you? You've got one thing in your head and that's it. And again, really fortunate it worked out, because it wouldn't be the advice I would give to any kid now. But I say I've got a son at that age who's in S2 just now. But again, that for me it was just a focus, I would guess. That's all I ever wanted to do.
Has he got the same interest in football?
He plays, but he just plays with his local boys club and that. So he's in S2, but he's a lot better in school than what I was, which is a good thing.
And from a kind of youth point of view, were you always with clubs from an early age, or were you at school teams and that for an early age, or what happened in that sense?
It was it's different now. So I was allowed. I played boys club until I was, I think, basically 15. Because when I was at Rangers from I was like 8. But we never actually really played. There was no leagues. There was nothing like that. So we still played by boys clubs in the weekend. Rangers would have you in at Easter holidays and stuff, and playing and training and things like that. But it was always boys club, school team, district team. I was South Lanarkshire. So it was always pretty much every day, really. And then at Easter holidays or whatever, you'd go in and train with Rangers and maybe get a game maybe once or twice a year. So it was slightly different to what the kids do now.
Do you think it's better the way you had it when you had the option to kind of play for different teams and things, or because the pro youth system's pretty complicated in what kids can do and what they can't do?
It depends who you speak to. There's good things in both, I would say. I think the argument against it nowadays is you take kids into academy too early and you're making them professionals before it's their time and all that kind of stuff. I love playing with my mates. I love playing with the school team. And actually, when I started coaching, my son was in primary 5, something like that. Primary 6, sorry. And he never had a school team. And I couldn't. I'm like, that was the best time I ever had. So I actually started a school team. They'd had a school team, but it wasn't really a thing. They were like maybe playing once a year. So I actually started a school team and took the primary 6s and 7s, and we went and started a team. So they were for me, I loved it. But also what the kids get now in terms of coaching and all the facilities and all that kind of stuff, it's miles ahead of what I ever had. But to say one thing's better than another, I don't think I would be right in saying that.
Different experience.
I loved what I had.
And that's the thing. I suppose you could weigh that up with your school and playing with your pals and loving the game, and to the facilities you've got now. If you were to go in and do it now, you've got absolutely everything, and no ash pitches in sight.
That's what I'm saying. I had actually, it wasn't even a red ash pitch I played on, it was a black ash pitch. And see if I took my kid even my son who just plays with boys clubs, see if I took him to that, then he just wouldn't be having it. So we played in a black ash pitch with no nets and the floodlights, see if the game was after school and it was dark. Nobody knew if the ball was going in or going past or, so it's slightly different now.
100%. I was talking to somebody about that the other day. Like, used to play with an orange might a mole master, and they're looking at me like I'm on a different planet, and they're like, what? Looks like a netball. It's like getting scudded with one of them on a winter's day. Wake you up. So did you leave school 16?
I I kind of went in work experience. I was having a tough time at school, just because, again, no through bad behaviour, just through
focused on the football.
Interested. And I actually went in, it was like work experience when I was 15 potentially. So I went in work experience and kind of never left.
Aye.
So I wasn't going to school a lot. Because it was just
switched off at that point.
And again, when I think back, I'm thinking, what was I doing? But anyway, it worked out, fortunately, as I said. But I went in work experience, and John Brown was a youth coach. So I was like 15, I kind of never left. So that was like 6 months I had before the training ground was built.
Right.
And then I'd 6 months at Ibrox going in minibuses to training and all that kind of stuff. So probably 15, 16 is when it started to get professional, if you like.
Aye. And did you always, as much as obviously you'd kind of school had took a back seat to it, were you always sure that you would make it and you would kind of get through it, or did you get to a point you're like, I don't know how this is going to pan out?
I think I thought I would always make it, because I think if you don't have that belief, then you get no chance. But when I think when I was 18, maybe 17, 18, sorry, and you get to that point where loads of boys are going on loan, and they're starting to get a wee bit of recognition. They're playing at Dundee's and things like that, and people are starting to speak about them, and you're still playing in the reserves and things like that, and you're trying to push in the door, you're not really getting anywhere. You've maybe been training with the first team, but nothing was really. So there was a period, I think, there was talking me going on loan, and I wanted to go. I think, I can't remember, St Mirren or something like that, and I was desperate to go. And they'll just give it another 6 months, and I did, and then my path was different to everybody else's that went on loan. But there was a point where I thought, I'm going to need to get out of here, because it was tough. When you see guys that you grew up with 8 and 9 all playing every week, and they're in the papers at the time, and you're like, I'm struggling here, I need to be playing. So that was probably maybe a 6 months to a year where I thought I need to get out and go and play men's football, really. And what was the kind of, I know you'd say there it was a different path for you, what was the kind of turning point for you in that sense? I think it was when I spoke to the manager. It was transfer deadline day and I was supposed to go, I'm sure it was St Mirren anyway, and the manager says, listen, you're going to be second choice left back. It was Ally McCoist at the time. So you're going to be second choice left back. If anything happens, you're in. And I was like, right, brilliant. And I think at deadline day at like midnight they signed Ollie Bernard, and I went quickly for second choice. I hadn't got to go on loan, and then they signed him. But fortunately for me, he wasn't very good when he came, which is that he was a great player actually, had a really good career, but he just had a tough time at Rangers, and that's when I started to then kind of push on a wee bit. But that nearly, I was struggling with that, because I thought, he promised me this, but it's the same as if something comes up for a manager and they get an opportunity to bring somebody in. I totally understand why you done it now. But back then I was absolutely fuming. That's what I was going to say. You're in that situation where you're like, you're obviously that age, but you're about to go and bang the manager's door and be like, you've just told me. But there's nothing you can do. And now being at the other side and a wee bit older, you actually understand why you done it. I was a young guy, and people weren't sure, even size wise, I probably wasn't big enough at that point to go and play in the first team. But credit to him, once that kind of panned out, he gave me my opportunity, and I'd like to think that I took it. How did you find that transition from being in the kind of age group you were into then going in with these professional players that are all athletes, are all built like tanks that can run through walls, and you're obviously coming for that younger environment? It was hard. It was really hard, because there was so many experienced players in my first day with the training with the first team, like your Ronald de Boers and that were still there, and it was hard. Like, you were, see if you passed the ball a yard the wrong side of somebody, they were on you, and it was tough. They gave you a lot of stick, and I must admit I really struggled with it at the beginning. It was hard, but you just get used to it, and then you try and, because it's every age group you up, whether it's 18s, 20s, reserves, the level just goes up all the time, and you have to adapt to it. And probably them giving me stick helped me adapt a wee bit quicker, because if you don't, you just get sent back, that's you. So you get that opportunity and you have to take it. Sink or swim in it. And I must admit I nearly sank at some points, because again it is really, really hard, and there was big characters, massive players, so it was hard. Was there anybody that was kind of right on you? I think they were, at that time they were all kind of like that. It was standards. There was the standard, and don't get me wrong, they're back to that now. But the standards, like your Barry Ferguson's, Ronald de Boers, people like, even guys like Craig Moore were still at the club, who'd been there for a long time, and you don't last that long if you haven't got that in you. Don't get me, there's people that shout and there's people that are quite quiet about it, but one thing they all did was train properly, and if you weren't at it, you just get found out so quickly. I would crumble like a deck of cards. I think I did crumble that day when the boar was shouting at me, but that's the thing, like if you're that age and you're going out there and you've got somebody who's played for Ajax and
Barcelona, right? You're like, fucking hell, man.
Aye,
Just
it
get the ball away from me.
It was when I looked up, that you receive that first pass and you look up and you see that's the next person you're passing to, you're like, oh, why did it have to be him? But it was hard.
And did it take you, was it just a case of kind of keeping plugging away, or did you ever feel comfortable in these surroundings in your early days, or did it take you a certain amount of time to kind of get into that?
It takes a while, because again, the level that they train at is miles ahead of what, I mean, every single one of them's international players.
Right.
Every weekend there's 6, 7, 8 players not getting in the squad that are international. So I was fortunate as well. I think the rules had changed back then when you had the 3 under-21 players on the bench. So probably the opportunities to train with the first team, because you were going to be involved at the weekend, came up more often than they'd had maybe for the age group previous to me.
Right.
And even being in and around the first team in match days, we probably got that experience earlier than probably guys that were there 2, 3, 4 years before us. But it helped us because you're in about the first team and then you're watching people and you're like, this is what it's like, this is what it takes. So that helped us, probably that rule change more than the group that was there before.
Who was your who did you look up to at that point?
I think Barry Ferguson was the man. He came through the academy, he was even on to captain the club, and he was the best player by an absolute mile. Even with guys like De Boer, every single day in training, every single game, he was the best player. The levels that he trained at were phenomenal. His ability in terms of coming through the academy, and he just did everything. He went in and he mixed it with some proper players, and again became the captain and was the best player every single time you seen him. So he was everybody in the academy. That was because it showed that if you had it, then you could go and get it, because he'd done it. And
was he good with the kind of younger guys because he kind of came through that?
He was hard. He was hard on you. And again, it's sink or swim. He's expecting the levels that he's at, and he puts the demands on you every single. It wasn't every single day, it was every single pass, every single second, every single session. If you were in his team and you weren't at that level, he told you. And it's again hard environment, but you have to learn really quickly.
And do you think that was a positive for you, having that kind of constant?
I don't know. People deal with it different. You probably get people that would sit and tell you a different story. It was fine with me. If I wasn't at the level it was required, I want somebody to be honest with me. I don't want anybody to tell me any lies. So you just deal with it. You deal with it, and again, sink or swim.
And I suppose you, for that position as well, and you see it more now with coaching, can you tell when somebody gets put into that environment if they're cut out for it?
I think it's everything's different now. I don't think, see the way that people train now, and even the way coaches speak, it's different. And again, going back to that, I don't know, people say, is it better now coaching, or the way the players speak to each other? I loved it. I loved coming through that environment, and people always say, it's because the coaches liked you, which they probably did. And again, if people sat here that came through the youth system with me that maybe never might sit and tell you a different story. But I loved the coaches that I had. I could only speak highly and positively of them. Even the players, people might not have liked the way that people spoke to them. I just dealt with it. I just got on with it. Was it hard at times? Absolutely, 100% it was hard at times, but I just dealt with it.
And were you of that generation that when you were in there you had like all your kind of chores and all that today and get stuff done? Do you think that's something that's missing now from a kind of younger generation of kids coming through?
To be fair to see now that I'm in the academy, the boys still do jobs. It's a wee bit harder now with COVID because you're not allowed certain places, so it's not completely gone. They things are still there. Maybe some of them that we used to do, they don't get done now, but it's still there. It's still part of their learning. It's still something that they have to, because they're going to their work now. It's a job for them. They're getting paid to do it, so they have to do all these things. I'm trying to think of the jobs that I have.
What was the worst thing you had to do?
I think I cleaned the minibuses one day, and that wasn't great. Especially I think we were training at Glasgow Green, and the poles, and there was muck everywhere and all that kind of stuff. And I've had cleaning the indoor hall when the training centre was built, and you're down on your hands and knees picking all the papers up. And, it's like deja vu now, because now that I'm back in the academy as a coach, I'm still picking all the stuff up. So it's I've had a few of them, but there was some ones that you're like, when the list goes up, you're just desperate not to get, like cleaning the footballs and all that kind of stuff. So, but they still do it.
And I suppose it does just go back to that, you're getting used to meeting those standards for a young age, even with jobs like that. It's just about getting it done and getting it done right.
I think when when seeing the club, when they start to think the jobs back when I was there, it was like, I think wee Burkie had it before me. It was clean the managers, it was clean the youth staff's boots. So you're cleaning like John Brown, John McGregor, Ian Durant, all these guys' boots. And then when they get to the first team, they then go to, it was like Ally McCoist's boots at the time. So wee Burkie had that job before me. And then I got the job, and I'm like, they must like me a wee bit then if I'm cleaning their boots. But you would clean them and you'd walk past and go, they're not clean back. Have you polished them? Then Jimmy Bell needs to look at them and say, are they clean, are they no clean, and make you clean them 5 and 6 times. Even if they've no wore them, you've still to clean them. all that kind of stuff. But I think they told us it was character building. I think that's what it was.
Hides so many sins, that term. Yeah, it's good for your character. A question that I had in a couple of weeks ago, and it was obviously coincidental with you coming on, and it was for a young guy who is currently playing with a team in Scotland now, and he's only 15, and he was like, ask him when he was going through that kind of 16 to 19 phase, did he have like occasions where he was just like, oh, fuck this, I can't do this anymore, like I can't see a way that this is going to work out for me?
I think injuries was a thing. See times with me, I think I was 16, my first year I signed full time at the end of that season, so I'd played every year, every game for the youth team. We won the youth cup, we won the youth league. I think I was only just turned 16 and I wasn't expecting to play full time. I'm a wee boy, and at the end of that season I got injured, and I think coming back for pre-season the next season, it was a Dutch doctor at the time, and they asked my mum and dad to come in for a meeting, and I'm like, oh. And he basically said, do you have any other hobbies? And I was like, no. And he's like, just take a year off. And my dad's like, what do you mean take a year off? You can't. I've just went for playing every single week in the youth team and all that, and you're flying, and I was like, I had a problem with my pelvis. I was swelling and all, inflammation and all this kind of stuff, and they just couldn't get to the bottom of what was actually wrong.
Right.
Don't know if I'd played too much when I was young, all that. I was still growing and all these kind of things. So I think I lasted about 2 weeks, and I'm like, I need to go back in. I need to go. So I was back in the gym, and to be fair, the club done everything that they could to try and get to the bottom of it, and it was something that probably affected my career the whole way through. So there was times within that you're thinking, what am I doing here? But again, you get back to that thing where you didn't really stick in at school like you should have. So there's all that comes into it. But again, the club looked after me the best. They sent me all the best people constantly. They gave me the best treatment constantly. They gave me every chance to try and get over it. So again, I've got a lot of time or a lot of people to thank for that work within the club, especially the medical people.
And I suppose it's a frustration for you because they can't get to the bottom of it. So it's not as if they can go, you need an op, that's you, 6 weeks. It's more like, well, we don't actually know. But
that's like, there used to be times people talk about doing your knee. I thought, I wish I'd just done my knee, because then you get the operation, you do the rehab, and you've got, they say 6 to 9 months you're back. But it was with me, I was going for injections every 2 or 3 months, going to see a specialist, getting an operation, wasn't working, going for another operation. But to be fair, the club just stuck with it, and because I was probably moody at times. It was because it's hard. All you want to do is play football. So that was probably, there was times within, I can't remember a specific time, but I guarantee you within all those injuries there was times where I just went, oh, can't be doing with this.
How did you keep yourself ticking over? See, in that point when, like, taking your down days out, but obviously trying to look at the light at the end of the tunnel, how did you keep yourself kind of positive?
No idea. Honestly, soon I look back, I've genuinely got no idea, because there was, when I went to Kilmarnock at the end, if I just jumped the whole, I basically had a hip replacement when I was 31. So basically you go for a hip operation, open your hip up, and if there's 3 things wrong with you, they rebuild the whole thing. So I woke up for the operation, the guy's like, bad news, the 3 things were wrong, so we've basically built your new hip. So I managed to come back for that, and then at 32 they were basically telling me I needed my right hip done as well. And I was like, nah, I can't do that. It was like, I think it was like 6 to 9 months of rehab. I think the first 12 weeks you're just basically lying on the floor in a cast. And I'm like, I'm not doing that again, because it was, but that, so soon I think back to the times when I was young, I've got no idea how I cope with that, but I've done it so many times, because there was so many points in my career that I was injured and I had to deal with all that, but I don't know how. I've got no idea.
And I suppose if you've done that with the hip as well, it's not just like a 6 to 9 months, it's a grueling 6 to 9 months to try and get yourself back to anywhere near fitness.
But even at that age, and to be fair, young Greg Taylor was coming through at Kilmarnock at that point, so he even then changed position and moved into midfield. But she trying to get fit at that age. I mean, I was doing extra sessions, I was going to boxing training, I was doing all sorts with PTs and all this just to try and get back, because I became quite, at that point, obsessed by being the fittest person. You get to a point when you've one bad game at a certain age and people go, oh, he's past it. So I was like, I need to be as fit as I possibly can be. To the point I was probably doing too much, but just all these things start to play with your mind. But the injuries was, again, if somebody said, how did you get through all that 16, 17 and then you play 40 games and you're out for 2 years, and how does, I don't know the answer.
It must just be a massive frustration. And then obviously you say hip replacement, you think of somebody like in their 70s, 80s.
I say hip replacement. My dad's waiting for a hip replacement now, so he's in severe pain. It was basically, we've got 3 things as a tear. I can't remember the actual medical terms for it,
right.
but they fixed the 3 things, and I'm lying there going, oh, brilliant. But again, when they said you need to get another one done, I'm like, nah, no way.
That's wild. And I suppose that kind of, would you say that's the kind of lowest point career-wise, the injury side of things?
Aye, it definitely. And I've said this before. People say, "Oh, injuries affect your career." I'm going, no, they never. I think I had to keep telling myself that.
Aye,
because it's if you're not the best, you pretend that you're that kind of way. I was like, I'm getting back. I'm fine. But now when I look back, it obviously did. There's no way that it didn't. With the amount of injuries that I had, the amount of time that I spent out, there's no way that it didn't affect my career.
Aye. And did you ever have runs where you kind of felt 100%, or did you always feel that there was a kind of niggle? Or
the only time I think was when I first broke into the team, and again I think I played maybe 25 to 30 games, because I had the problem when I was 16, so I always knew when it was starting to grumble again.
Aye.
And after about 25-30 games it started to come again. I'm like, oh, here we go. Because at that point you're flying. I mean, I had played 25-30 games in a row. You feel like you're playing for Rangers, you're 18-19, it's the best feeling in the world. And then you start to feel it and you're like, oh no. And then at that point I think I was out for maybe a year and a half, trying to get, I think I had 3 hernia operations at that point.
Jeez.
The last one, because I think this was just when Walter Smith had been appointed, so him and Ally McCoist came in, and I remember Ally McCoist pulled me one day. He's like, how can we help you? He's like, we need to get to the bottom of this. We're going to send you the best people in the world. We need to get you fixed. And to be fair, they did. They sent me to Germany, and I got an operation, and I managed to come back and train for maybe a period of 3 or 4 or 5 years without that pain. But then I think everything else just started to take its toll. And again, I always say this, I think I was really lucky, because the injuries that I had, people would probably have chucked it at 18, 19, but I managed to get to 32. Didn't play a lot of games, because people look at I made my debut when I was 17, 18, retired at 32. People automatically think you must have played 500, 600 games. But I think I only played about 150, 200, but I was fortunate enough to play at big clubs and playing big games as well. So I was really fortunate that way, because I say other people might have not got to that point.
100%. With maybe one of those injuries, never mind like a career of them. Happy points, you just touched on it there. Obviously, 18, 19-year-old, can I try not be controversial and say one half of Glasgow, you're living the dream. How was it? How was it actually getting into the team and establishing yourself as the first choice left back?
It was weird. I think you just, there's one, that's always what's the best advice you got. My granddad actually said to me, and sort of, he passed away recently, never get too high, never get too low. When I've signed my first contract, I need a season ticket at Ibrox for like 65, 70 years. And never get too high, never get too low. And at the time, you're 16, you signed that contract. I say, Tom, I'm high as a kite, I'm absolutely buzzing. But the longer I was there, you start to realise, but I always say that's a good thing. See that at clubs when there's highs and lows, because it means that you're playing for something. And if you don't win, you have to be low. Because that's the start. You have to win all the time. I get that now, but at the time I'm like, what's he talking about? Why do you keep saying that all the time? But now it makes sense. So again, there's so many highs. There's so many. At 18, 19, when you're playing there, it's the best feeling in the world. But I was one of the unfortunate ones that can get taken away from you like that as well. So you've got to make the most of it. And that's the thing. I see a lot of players now. I want to be a footballer. But they don't show you every single day that they want to be a footballer. Some people kind of pretend and they play with it a wee bit. They like the idea of being a footballer, but it's hard work. It takes a lot of hard work, but the highs are worth it.
That's what I was going to say, like finding yourself in that team, as you say, with all the internationals, and you're obviously a starter in that team. That must be one of the biggest confidence boosts you can get. Like you get in there and going like, I'm in this 11.
It takes a while to actually feel like you're there. It takes, I don't know, when did you get the feeling that you actually belonged? It takes a wee while, because you still feel like that wee guy. He's just
even when you were like halfway through that season, you still
I don't know when it kind of drifted. But I think there just comes a point where you just start like, this is me, I'm in now. Because I always felt that you were maybe a couple of bad games away for the club going and paying £3, £4, £5 million for a left back. Like,
was that good for you, but having that kind of...
Maybe. I think that's the way a big club, it will always should be. It doesn't always work out like that. But I always just felt that there's a potential for somebody, even after I'd played the 30, 40 games, it was when Ally McCoist left and Le Guin was coming in. So it was that period where no, you didn't really know. Because because Le Guin was a massive name when he came in, didn't work out, but it was a massive name, so you're sitting there thinking, you could bring somebody from France that doesn't know me, doesn't even know who I am. So it was a period where you're just thinking, it's unknown really. And then when he came in and he likes you, and then that's two managers that have kind of put you in the team and put their faith in you. So I think at that point I kind of felt like I'm here.
Because it must be a boost. Like you say, I remember that time, and he'd obviously come for a brilliant Leon team. For him to come in and say, like, I want you to be here, it must be brilliant for you, sitting there kind of worrying about it, thinking, is he going to buy somebody, is he no, to then go, right, I've got this guy's backing here. And
to be fair, he did play young players. He always believed it, or he gave us all an opportunity. Again, didn't work out, but it was just that, I think that feeling, you felt like a proper first team player. I think I signed a new contract in that period as well, so you're then starting to think, oh, this is it, you're in the changing room every day, and you just become more used to the environment.
And you get to a point where, because obviously at the start, you must have nerves going into that dressing room with all the big fucking personalities. Is it just like a kind of journey of acceptance with these guys? To the kind of, the more they see you, the more they see you playing, performing.
It's a hard one, because my first locker was next to Stefan Kloss.
Right.
So he was in my left hand side, and I can remember one day, and I always thought I was tidy and had OCD and all this, but I came in one day and I opened my locker, and like, we used to get Powerade, so it was like the energy drinks at the time, and all these Powerade bottles just fell at my locker. And he's like, don't leave a mess next to my locker. And he was so quiet, like he hardly ever spoke, but I spoke to him probably more than anybody, because he tried to look after me, because I was a young guy sitting next to him. He's like, just don't leave mess. So I'd obviously left a bottle or whatever, and he's just found all the bottles he could, and I've pulled it home and they've all fell. I'm like, all right, okay. I never left a bottle again. But that was his way of saying to me, don't be leaving mess next to my locker.
And that's it, I suppose. But see, like what you were saying about the training and that's probably just as big a test as being out there, because you've got like a guy who's been at Dortmund, won fucking the Champions League and all that, saying to you, fucking sort that out.
I know. But even people like Jimmy Bell, I can remember you start to, and to be fair, there is a point where you probably get carried away with a wee bit, and you think you're obviously walking and people notice, and you're walking about with a wee swagger, and I think everybody does it as a young player. I think it's hard not to get carried away. And you've got Jimmy, but he just drops wee comments in, like, see if you take 2 towels or whatever, you're not supposed to take one. John Gregg didn't take 2 towels, son. Wee things like that, and then you're thinking, I better only take 1 towel tomorrow because Jimmy's watching me. Do you know that way? So it's just people just to kind of just subtly tell you, like, you need to calm down a wee bit, and it's that bit where don't get too high and don't get too low, because it just goes.
How was the obviously you played in some massive games, you played in the Champions League, you played in the Rangers Celtic games. How are the nerves in there, kind of, because obviously it must be a step up playing in the Scottish games, but then going to the games, it must be another.
I was always nervous. I was always a nervous person. I don't know if I was anxious, maybe when you look back, maybe a wee bit anxious, but I was always fine as soon as I was changed. So I used to get really nervous driving to the game. So, I was driving to see all the fans walking in the stadium. I used to get really nervous. And then as soon as I get my kit on and changed and ready to go in the warm-up, I was absolutely fine. But that, I don't know what it was about that drive to the stadium. It just, every time, it never ever left me.
Did you just play the game in your mind at that point, or were you just...
I don't know. Must have been thinking about the game, or maybe who you're playing against, but as soon as I was changed, no matter the game, I was absolutely fine. But I always had that knots in the stomach when I was driving to the stadium. Don't know why, don't know what it was. But it was always, and even I'm like, I'm not going to be like that next week. I'm not going to, and I was like that all the time. And
then when the game starts, you're fine?
Absolutely fine. I don't know what it was. I think I just blanked out the noise when I was playing or whatever. I don't know. I would be lying if I says I knew the answer, but I had it every single time I drove to that stadium.
See, in the games, is it actually, obviously I've seen players talk about it before, is it hard to even kind of have a minute to think to yourself just with the wall of noise that's going on round about you?
It's tough. Because I remember, I think one of my first games, I was at a period of injured when Walter had came in, and I came in the week before against, there was a load of injuries, and they brought me back in because I hadn't played for a long time. And I think we were maybe a point behind Celtic getting into the game, and I'd played maybe 3 or 4 before it, but I was playing wide left. So I went into the game, and I cannot remember a thing about it. It was just like a blur. It was because I'd played at Motherwell at home, and you kind of remember wee things, the tempo's not as high, but that game, I think Steve Davis scored, and we went top of the league, but it was just like bedlam. You could not think, could not breathe. I think I came off about 70 minutes. I was nearly sick. But I just couldn't tell you anything about the game. The games are they're just mad.
And is it the same in Europe as well? 'Cause I suppose the kind of technical level goes up a wee bit.
The technical level is massively different, but the atmosphere, see that and the music plays, whether it's
Aye.
at the time it was UEFA Cup or Champions League, or the music is unreal, and see the kind of round of applause and the cheer after they take the flag away and all that kind of stuff. So, but I had that when I was it 9 or 10, when Rangers won the Champions League. I used to be in the academy, so we used to go on the pitch and we used to be the wee guys.
Oh, the flag in the centre circle.
So I'd done all that when Rangers played like Bayern Munich and stuff.
Right.
So I'd had that experience of that noise and stuff, and it's just mad. It's mad. It's a mad feeling.
It's unreal. How was how were you after a defeat?
I don't like getting beat. I never liked it.
Did it linger? Were you one of the ones with a few days it kind of sat?
But when you're at certain clubs, the feeling, I think the feeling's worse, because that's something that I couldn't understand when you go to other places where you're getting beat sometimes. Like, next week it's fine, and it was never fine.
Aye.
And I was just brought up like that. But we couldn't get beat in training. I had guys like, as I've mentioned before, I've worked with like Bobby Russell's, Tommy McLean, John Brown, Ian Durant's, John McGregor's. You just didn't get beat.
Aye.
And I know the game's completely different now, but that's the way I was brought up, and that's what was always put into me. You just never lose.
Aye.
So when you did, it was sore.
Aye.
Obviously the bigger the games or losing it in leagues was always a lot worse. But again, it's something that I would always prefer. You always want to be a club that's playing for these things and challenging. You'll never, in Glasgow and Scotland especially, you'll never win all the time because there's two massive clubs, and that's just the way it is. But it was always hard.
And were you always critical of your own performance? Were you quite did you analyse how you'd played each game, or did you just kind of park it as soon as you were done?
I think when I was younger, I never. Again, the older you get, to be the older I got as well, there was more video analysis coming in, so you get to watch your clips back and all this kind of stuff. So you start to become more aware of things like that. Whereas when I first kind of broke into the team, it was some reporter was writing the numbers in the paper the next day. It was like, oh, you get a 5 or a 6 or whatever. So you're like, how did I get 5 or a 6? So that was pretty much it. That was a way at the beginning. And again, when you get older, you get all the video clips and all the analysis is starting to be there as well. So that kind of developed that side of it.
I suppose you're at any level, you know yourself when you've had a bad game or a good game. You know as soon as you come off the park without anybody.
Or when your dad tells you. But I was always probably harsh in myself. I was probably in that side of it. I didn't like to say, I done well today or whatever. I was always probably more on the negative side of it. I don't know. Again, I don't know why. It must just be me.
What was your for your kind of first stint at Rangers? What was your kind of high points game wise? What sticks out for you?
I think the Villarreal one, that was huge. And I watched bits of it back. I've still never watched the full game. But I watched a video, it must have been on YouTube or something, my wee boy was showing me it. And it's just the atmosphere before it. And again, I can't remember anything about that game. And I always see Lovenkranz's goal and him running to celebrate and me beside him, and me and Burkie with our terrible haircuts. But it was, when you look at their team and the size of that game, it was just, at the time you're just young, you're just naive, you just get thrown in and you just go and play. But see, if I was 30 and I was going to play against them and they had all the players, I'd probably gone, I'm not sure about this. But when you're young, you just go and you just play. Probably the adrenaline gets you through it and probably takes you to a level that you probably normally don't get to.
And it's, as you say as well, it's the kind of the standards when you see your teammates hitting their levels, it just kind of pushes you.
And that my only thing I ever wanted to do was play with Rangers. I didn't have interest in anything else other than that. So when I left there, I probably struggled a wee bit at other clubs. All I wanted to do was play with Rangers. And this sounds mad, but it was genuinely all I ever wanted to do. So when you get that opportunity, and again, I heard Gary Neville saying it. He says if he went to Everton, but he says they've been rubbish because all I ever wanted to do was play for Man U. It was like it took him at a level that he probably couldn't have got to anywhere else. And I don't know, he was a brilliant footballer, I wasn't. But it was probably a similar feeling for me, because that's all I ever done for 8-year-old to 24, 25, and then when you leave to go to somewhere else, you're like, I'm not sure about this.
Did you see at that point? Did you ever think to yourself, "I'll be back here"?
No.
At one point, no.
It was completely different for me. I think when you're Barry Ferguson's leave because of how good he actually was, there's always a chance he comes back because he's that good. Whereas I wasn't even playing. I think played maybe 15 games a season that I left. So you're never, especially if they still sign the calibre of player that they've always done. The only reason I come back is because of where they were.
Is it still gut wrenching, but for you even at that point, even if you're not playing as much, to actually be like, I'm leaving now. This is this is kind of closing for me?
It was a hard one because I actually could have stayed. They offered me another contract. It was a year. I think it was another year. And Walter Smith says, listen, the contract's here. He says, see if you go somewhere else and you don't fancy it, the contract will still be there. Because I think they knew the type of character I was. I was never one for going and banging the manager's door down if I wasn't playing. I would rather go in the next day in training, try and be, I would never be the best player, but I would be the hardest working player. And it was like, we used to, again, when you're in Europe, you used to travel. There used to be a group that used to have to train the next day. And I always used to say to the players, when I get older, I was like, this is the days when, see, there's only 7 or 8 boys training, and all the boys that play every week, aren't they? That's the days when you earn another contract here. Because see, if you train every single day, again, we'll not be at the level in terms of quality as the guys that are playing, but that's when you get on the bench. That's when you get that extra year that you maybe don't think you're getting.
That's when people are watching you to see what you do.
And it genuinely worked for me, because at that point we used to get our stats put up on the wall. So after every session, you got who run the furthest.
Oh, so everybody can see it. Right.
And I always used to say, I need to be in the top. I need to be the top player in that. Whether my passing's good or not, but I'm going to make sure I'm the top of all the lists.
Because there's no hiding place, is there? If you're sitting.
No.
Fucking hell, you know what would have bought me that.
I know.
Jeez.
To be fair, that's the thing. Even stats, and there's probably a few at the bottom that are right good players. So, but for me, I was never at that level where I could be at the bottom and I was the best player on the ball. I had to be the guy that was the hardest working all the time.
So then you went to Norwich. What did you notice? I know we spoke about the kind of the standards at Rangers. What did you notice about going down south that was different from when you played up here?
I don't know. There was times I think at Norwich they could have done things better, and I could certainly have done things better. I didn't like it. And again, I don't know.
Just the move or the club? Or
I was in my comfort zone at Rangers, but it was just all my life. 8-year-old to 24, all I'd done. I grew up with the women in the canteen, the laundry, the kit people, all that. I had youth coaches, first team coaches. It was my life. So to go there, and I was like, and I actually, when I went for the first meeting with my dad, and Paul Lambert was the manager, and I left the meeting, and I was like, I don't like this. I don't like it. And he's like, oh, you need to get a chance. It's just because. So
just kind of gut feeling.
My gut feeling was I didn't like it, and I signed. And I didn't like it. I hated it. I was young at the time, so at 24, I think I just did my second kid.
Did your family move?
So she was born down there actually. I had to deliver her in the house, so all this stuff was going on. But again, I think I delivered her in the house, and they say the Saturday, I had a game on the Tuesday night, and this is when it kind of came to a head. And I actually had an argument with the manager in the changing room. And I probably said things I shouldn't have said. It wasn't bad, but when I look back now, I'd certainly handled it differently than what I did, and I'd like to think that they would probably say the same. But sometimes that happens.
I suppose as well, though, it goes back to that view that people can have of footballers of everything else outside of football. You're just chilling and then kicking about all day and spending money, but it isn't like that. It's you've got like stuff going on with your kids. You're at a club that you don't necessarily know if you're really happy with or no. So you've got about 1,000,001 things kind of spinning round, and then you've got the pressure of the club as well.
And it was hard because they'd just been promoted to the Championship and done really well, and he tried to keep that group. So see that kind of 15 or 16, they were really close in that group. I always felt like I was on the outside. But the boys that were playing all the time were excellent for him. For Paul Lambert, done a really good job at Norwich. And when I went to sign, there was a guy playing left back who was like a club legend. He was like 32, 33, maybe a wee bit older. And his name was Adam Drury. He was unbelievable. I'd never really heard of him, if I was being brutally honest. But, so he had a lot of injuries the season before. That's how they were kind of signing me. He was older. I was supposed to be the guy that was. But he nearly played every game, and every game he played, he was the best player. And the fans loved him. So it was that way where you came in, you're probably getting compared to him, and the guy was a right good player. I think there was talk of him years before getting like an England cap and stuff like that. So he was a top player.
But that's more pressure on you right away before you even kicked a ball.
And the fact that I didn't really like it. And the fact I got injured the last day of pre-season before the season started, so I was always chasing to try and get back fit. It just didn't work. And there was loads of reasons, but that, like, people are like, why are we not? But the guy was a right good player. And he deserved it. If both of us were fit at that point, he would have played because his status at the club and his standing, and for the fact of how good he actually was. So it was tough.
How did you find the Championship? Because it looks mental.
I never played a lot. I think I only played 6 or 7 games before we actually fell out. And but I played Crystal Palace, and Zaha was playing right wing for Crystal Palace, and
decent at that age as well.
He gave me an absolute doing.
What age would he have been at that point?
I'm not actually sure. I don't know. No idea. But he was unreal.
Aye.
And it was different because at Rangers, I'd always been that guy that was attacking all the, you're attacking fullback, you're this and you. But down there, it was every week you're playing against a winger that he's going to get at you all the time. So it was a slight change in what I'd been used to all my life. Again, probably struggled to deal with that, didn't deal with it very well. So all the things were going on as well, but it was just a different game than what I'd played my whole career, really.
And did you ask for a move at that point, or what how did it play out when you'd kind of had the disagreement?
I think I ended up in loan, so I came back to Scotland in loan.
With Aberdeen?
Aye. And I wanted to go for financial reasons. They didn't really, because they felt that they could get more money if I went to a team in League One or whatever, but I just wanted to come back up the road. So I kind of held out and made a few arguments about that as well, but eventually I got to go to Aberdeen on loan for 6 months and play again. So that was good for me, and it was only because it was Craig Brown and Archie Knox that were there, who I knew for Scotland under 21. So as soon as I got the opportunity to go there, I was delighted to go.
And did you start to get the enjoyment back at that point when you were kind of back playing? And
it was Archie Knox probably more than anybody else is the reason that I went, but I just done anything to get out of Norwich. If I was being honest, I just had to get back.
And with Aberdeen, could you have signed for them, or was it always just a kind of...
I was going to sign, but again, Norwich were being funny because I still had a contract there. So they were obviously knowing that Aberdeen couldn't pay the money that teams in England could pay. So that's how I ended up going to Preston, but I was wanting to go to Aberdeen. But it just ended up that I went to Preston instead.
And was it the same... Did you find it the same as Preston as this?
No, I like Preston. It was... with a good group of boys, and I instantly felt like, because there was a few Scottish boys there, and I instantly felt part of that. And that was a good club, and the manager that signed me, I get injured straight away, first game. So
same injuries you'd had?
First game for them. They were desperate to get a left back in, and it was like literally the last day of the window, so they got me for Norwich, and I pulled my calf in the warm-up, but I didn't want to tell them because I was too embarrassed. I'm like, oh my God, he's just signed me, it's my first game, I can't go off injured in the warm-up. But I actually tore my calf. So I played like 65 minutes with a torn calf.
Agony.
So even at half time I went in and I said to physio, and the physio's rubbing it. And he's like, are you sure you're okay? And I'm like, I'm fine, aye. He's like, you know, he can obviously feel something that and it was agony.
Did he say anything?
No, don't know if he did, but 60, 75 minutes, they were saying that they took me off because I hadn't really played for a period. So they took me off. And the next day I had to go for a scan. I think I was out for like 14 weeks because basically my calf had a grade 3 tear in my calf. So manager was raging.
Did he find out that?
But he was raging because he's like, I've just signed you and I've got the other left back. That's the reason we brought you in, and I'm out for like 3 months. But I just didn't want the embarrassment of signing and getting injured in the warm up. So I thought I have to go through a bit of pain to at least play for. So that was, and then I got back fit. He ended up getting sacked. It was Phil Brown. And then they brought a new guy in who was, he was terrible. So but I think it was I think Preston financially were going through a tough time as well, so they were trying to get a lot of boys out and all that kind of stuff. So ended up going to America after that.
So I was going to say, it's when you look at it geographically, like kind of Aberdeen to Preston, then to Portland. How did that move come about?
It was actually Chris Boyd phoned me. So again, the club were having problems financially. The new manager who came in, he was having a nightmare. He was hopeless. I would never really say that about a coach or manager, but he wasn't great. The boys were hating it. We actually thought he was going to lose his job, but the club kind of backed him. Peter Ridsdale was the chairman at the time. I think he's still there. And he had a meeting with the players and said, listen, we're backing the manager. Anybody that doesn't want to be here, come and see me. But Chris Boyd had phoned me like a week before saying, would you ever come out to America? And I was like, if I'm ever going to do it, this is the perfect. So I just phoned. To be fair to Peter Ridsdale, was like, come and see me in the morning. I went and seen him and I was away. And then I was off to America, I think a day or two later. So it kind of worked out for me because all the boys for Preston at the time were absolutely hating it because of this new manager. And they were texting me saying, how did you get to America and how did you get your contract? But Peter Ridsdale said, if nobody wants to be here, come and see me. I was obviously the only one that phoned him or said, listen, I don't want to be here.
At least he was decent enough to be like, right, fine.
And he was. But again, I think at that point they were just desperate to get players out the door.
How was America?
Loved it. I loved it. As I say, it was Chris Boyd was there already, so that he'd already been there for say a month or 2 months, so they were already started the season. So he knew where all the apartments were and all this kind of stuff. So he actually done a lot for me in terms of getting me an apartment and sorting everything out at that end. But initially it was like a trial period, so I think that was they were that, oh, you coming out have a look at us and we'll have a look at you, but it was really them having a look at me. But it was unreal.
Decent standard.
Aye, it was. But I remember going to when I went out for the trial, and Boydie's agent was still there, and they were saying, you'll never believe like the atmosphere. You'll never, because you just don't think. You just automatically think it's, I don't know, it's in America. It's not going to be great.
Aye.
The atmosphere was incredible. I went to the first game and I'm like, this is amazing. And I ended up, after a week, I think I signed to the end of the season.
Right.
So I was there for about 8 or 9 months, and I honestly loved every single second of it.
And would you have stayed longer, or did you want to come back at that point? Or
I did have thought, well, I blame Boydie for this. So he was, so you get over there, you get the designated player, like the big, so you've got Beckham at LA and all this kind of stuff, but Chris Boyd was our designated player, and he fell out with the club. So John Spencer signed us both, who was a Scottish manager, also played with Rangers and Chelsea and whatever, so he signed both of us, but he actually gets sacked.
Right.
So at that point when he gets sacked, Boydie didn't play, he stopped playing, but I was playing all the time, and they brought in, so it works differently over there. They've got a general manager who oversees all the transfers, but he then became the manager.
Right.
So they had a kind of disagreement about, I can't remember what it was, but he ended up not playing. And over there, that was like it never happened before. The designated player is like, he always plays, but there he wasn't playing. He wasn't even training at some points. But I was always seen as like his mate, as obviously you would be, because I signed after
guilty
him.
by association.
Aye, but I played every game, and I actually was playing really well. But basically, because I was at Preston and I was only going for 6 months, financially it wasn't great for me. It was more about just going over there and just enjoy playing football
Experience,
again.
Innit?
So, but they had agreed that after that 6 months we would renegotiate the contract at obviously different numbers to what it was there previously. But that never really, they started changing it, but at that point they were trying to negotiate Chris Boyd leaving as well. Right. So I think it was a kind of bit of both. Aye. But I loved that. The club was unbelievable. It's an amazing club. He's done you over there. I still blame him to this day. He got me there, so he got me like 8 months in the MLS I would never have got before. So.
And is it something you would recommend to kind of young Scottish boys to go and try abroad if they do get the chance to go and play?
100%. Again, I know it being America, sometimes it gets a bad, a bad reputation for whatever reason. But I thought the level was good. The stadiums are incredible. Training grounds are all amazing. Facilities you get are second to none. So I've had a few people ask me about it, like maybe 18, 19 year olds that aren't going to quite make it here. I would, if they go at that age and they get the opportunity to go and play in the MLS, I don't think they'll ever come back. And the thing is, you expect with America as well, the facilities and that will be. Well, when I was leaving, that was them just getting to the point where they were, because I think they'd all been so focused on the teams in the MLS, but they were starting to try and get the structure behind it, whether it's reserves, the academies, and so they're just kind of getting into all that. And Portland had just built their new training centre, and it was unreal.
Throwing a lot of money at it now. No. And then back to Rangers. Was that a surprise, or how did that come about? Because obviously I'm assuming you never seen it coming.
No, I never. And even though I was there for a young age, I always felt really awkward about going back in. Even when I felt really, really weird. Even when I was going back into coach, I felt dead nervous, like I shouldn't be there for some reason. I don't know what it was. There was always just to be players that just shouldn't hang about and come back, and which is absolutely fine. But I just didn't feel comfortable. But Rangers TV had phoned me to go in and do an interview. And at that point, obviously, Kenny Miller was playing in the MLS, Boydie was playing in the MLS. The season runs different, so they were getting into train. And
just to keep fit. Yep.
So I was doing an interview for Rangers TV, and I actually didn't even want to see like Ally McCoist. I didn't want to see anybody. And he was walking past the window at the time. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm just doing an interview for Rangers TV." He's like, "Oh, you know what? I come in and train." I was like, "Oh no, he's asked me. I can't say no." So I was like, at that point, I had still in my head that I was going back, because at this point, I'm thinking my contract was still there. I were at least going to talk about it. But my wife was in Inverness. She's from Inverness. So she'd been back up there for a period as well. So I'm like, right, okay, I'll come in and train. I went in and train, still with the idea that I'm going back to the MLS. And then that started to get pulled away. But Rangers at that point had a transfer embargo. But it came a point where I was training Monday to Friday with them, and then also they're going to the games at the weekend, and I was just going up to Inverness and doing whatever. And he said to me one day, he's like, "Would you play as a trialist?" Because they could play trialist, but they couldn't sign any players. I said, obviously, I was like, 100% I'll play. But they never worked out because it was paperwork, because of the MLS. There was a problem with it, which couldn't happen. But he's like, "What are you doing in the summer?" And this was January time. And then you're supposed to get, I think, pre-season MLS is like January 14th, 15th. I was like, "I'm not sure." He's like, "Would you come back?" I'm like, 100%, of course I would. Because my options at that point, no disrespect to anybody else, would have been don't know, St Mirren, Partick Thistles, that kind of level. I was like 100% I'll come back. But it meant that I had basically January until the summer. In a club. But I was still training in there every day. So I just had to accept that if I wanted to go back there, that's what was it was going to happen. So I was training there Monday to Friday.
Right.
The MLS thing or the Portland thing got pulled away. So I just trained in there every day.
And at that point, were you, the closer it got, were you kind of worrying about whether it was going to...
Well, he said to me, again, he said, would you come back? Aye, it's fine. He says, right, we'll get it sorted in the summer. But then 2 or 3 weeks into the summer and nothing happens. And again, at that time, the club was probably quite unpredictable, probably, especially for the manager. He probably didn't know what was happening. So I started to panic. What am I going to do? So, but then a phone call came saying, you come down, would you discuss this, and this, and your medical's here? And I was like, right, okay. And I went and done it. So it was interesting.
That's what I was going to say. Obviously, for you being there the first time, was there a big difference for you going back? And obviously the Rangers were in a different situation at that point, but did you feel that, or was it just like it always was for you when you went kind of back in?
I noticed, and I don't in a disrespectful way, I noticed a massive difference in the level of player when I was back training. And then I didn't notice anything about the club. Like the club was just still going out there training, and it's still the same. It's still the same facilities. Everything was the same, apart from the level of player. But then when you get further into it, you realise it wasn't the same, and it was just the staff were doing everything they could to kind of shield you from everything that was going on, because it was such a difficult time, especially for them. But they done everything they could to try and just solely make it about the games and training, and took everything else away from us. And they took all that pressure.
How did you find the pressure of, because obviously at that point, going through the leagues, there was the expectation that, they'll just steamroll on everybody and run over the top of people. But I suppose for you guys and the team, doesn't it work like that? Because when teams are playing Rangers or Celtic, it's a cup final for them. It's no, they're not just going to turn up and roll over.
It was hard, honestly. It was they were tough. The day years they were really tough, just mentally more than anything else, because you couldn't really win. Even the likes of signing me, you probably get a lot of criticism for that. So why is he signing him? I'd probably have been the same. I totally get that. But I knew he was never ever going. Lee Wallace was here, who still is a top player, but at that point was vice captain. I knew I wasn't going to play all the time, but I think the reason he probably signed me is because he knew how I trained, and he knew how I worked, and he knew he could trust me. If I wasn't playing for 5 or 6 weeks and I had to go and play, I would be fit as I possibly could be. I was never going to be the best player, but I think that probably is the reason. And he knew the standards that I had every day at training, and maybe a lot of young players were running about the squad just to try and lift all that kind of stuff. But I totally understand why Rangers fans are like, what are you signing him for? What are you signing? And I still see the picture of all the signings that get brought in, and it's like my brother will send it to me now and again, and we're all standing there, and you're thinking, why? Like, but the club was just so. It was miles off it at that time.
But the thing is, as well, you know yourself, doesn't matter who, Rangers can sign somebody at any point, fans will pick holes in it. It doesn't matter. You could go out and sign Ronaldo tomorrow and fans would pick holes in it.
But again, but I just love being that's the only club I ever wanted to play for, as I said, and it was but when you're getting slaughtered all the time, it's hard. That is, it's so hard, but you just have to thick skin and try and deal with it.
And that's the thing, because obviously I've had a season ticket and I've sat, and I noticed when I was younger, it was always the Scottish boys that got kind of slaughtered first. And I always remember, like, when I was growing up, like, Mo Ross used to get pelters, and you watch the game, you're like, he's not even done anything. Like, he's not done anything wrong, and you're like, how does that feel being out on the pitch? Because it's obviously, you feel awkward sitting in a crowd, and you're like, that's horrendous.
It's a horrible thing. It's hard to deal with. I think I was fortunate when I first came through. You usually get about 5 to 10 games, and then they start to the things they would let you away with, and the 5 to 10 games don't let you away with anymore. I think I'd done all right for a longer period in that, so I was always, he's doing well. But then when you come back for injury, you get the doubts about, he doesn't look at the level he was before, and they start down you that way. But you still get that wee bit where they go, we'll give him a wee bit of time because he's been injured for a long time and he'd done well before. So I probably got a wee bit longer than anybody else. But the second time I came back, it was just constant. It was constant. But then again, I understand that I'd have probably been saying the exact same things myself, but it was and even that, sometimes he was trying to play me wide left and Lee Wallace behind me, and it just didn't feel right. But you had to go and do it to the best of your ability, and I was never ever going to say I'm going to be the best player, I'm going to play in front of Lee Wallace, I'm going to do this. It was never me signing there was never really probably about that. It was more what happens in training and all that kind of stuff. But that's my thought process in it all anyway.
And do you just, when you're in that position, is it as easy just to block it out, or do you just concentrate in the game and kind of switch off to it?
It's no easy just to switch off at that point, because you know it's coming. And again, it was just constant, because I think it was at League One we won, we never get beat, but even that, there was some horrible games and just didn't feel good. And then obviously the Championship season was probably a disaster. So it was just constant, because even though you won League One, you don't get beat, you're still getting slaughtered. You're maybe only winning 2-0, people are going, how are they only winning 2-0? But then when you go into the Championship, you start losing a few games. But the Championship that year was actually quite strong. By the way, we should have done miles better than we did, 100%, but it was actually a decent level in the Championship. So they were just getting battered constantly, and it was just a mental battle every single day.
And I suppose for your point of view, it's hard as well, because there was a lot of good teams in that Championship, but then the fans are sitting going, how are we no counting this? And I suppose the players must be to agree as well, sitting going, we should be doing better than we're now. But it's just that kind of, it goes back to what you're saying when you're coming through as a youngster. I think you can either cope with that or you can't.
But even I feel really sorry for Ally McCoist at the time. People say, he's not a good man, he's a better assistant manager, and he had so much to deal with. And see the players that he signed, I've said this hundreds of times, we should have done so much better. Should we all been playing for Rangers? 100% no. But we should have won the Championship for the players that he brought in.
How do you feel it was as a manager?
I loved him. He gave me everything. He was every day, he brought me back to the club. He didn't have to bring me back. He brought me back for the reasons that I've already said. But I had a great relationship with him, I still do. But I just think he had one of the hardest jobs ever in that period, because you couldn't win at that point. And there was so much going on. He probably had to deal with so much more off the pitch than anything on it.
Kind of right job at the wrong time.
So it was probably a tough one for him.
Advice wise, obviously I know you said that your granddad had gave you some good bits, but kind of going through your career, is there anything else that sticks out for you that you've had off of maybe other pros? Or
no, I don't think anybody's ever said anything to me that I've went, oh, that's good. I think they just show you. And again, people show you good things and bad things. I think you've just got to pick the right way to go about things. I would never speak to players or the way certain people would, but you can still give them the same message but in a different way. So I think I think one of my, what kind of coach are you? I think one of my strong points is dealing with people. But you've also got to deal with people, you've got to be honest with them, because if you're no, then you're just telling them lies, and there's nothing worse than a player when a coach just tells you lies. And as a coach, you'll always get found out if you tell people lies. So I would rather just be honest with people, but you have to do it in the right way. And there's certain people you can say go to a certain level, and there's other people that maybe need something different, but you have to recognise that.
And did you always see yourself going into coaching? Was it always something that you wanted to explore?
Probably no. I always knew, because the first thing I done was start my own academy. And I knew, because of all the injuries I had at Killie, I probably knew I was retiring way before it kind of happened, if that makes sense. And when I spoke to Steve Clark, he said, can you give it an extra year or whatever? And I was like, no, I'm done. And people always say to me now, do you regret it or do you miss playing? I don't miss it one bit, because I actually think all the time I had it injured just prepared me for what was coming. And I just couldn't deal with the mental side of driving to Kilmarnock every day, because when you're injured, you have to be in first, you're in like an hour earlier than all the players, you're in the gym, you're doing all the rehab stuff, and it just became horrendous. So I think I was probably more prepared for that than most people.
And from the coaching academy side of things, was that something that you just wanted to do for yourself rather than kind of going into a club right away just to kind of try and get a wee bit of experience?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, because even when I started my own academy, I think I maybe had my licence, so I could have went and coached an under 18 team or whatever it was. I think obviously you see Kevin Thompson has been really successful doing his own academy and things like that. So I'd maybe watched him and seen what he'd done and thought, I think one of the things I wanted away from was professional football at a point, because again, you just become, it comes to a point where mentally it just becomes tough. So I needed a wee break. But then when you get back into it, you then start to get that feeling again as to why. But I still love doing my own academy.
What age groups do you do?
Basically from 5 right through to kind of 14, 15 is my oldest boys just now. This boys you've been working with for nearly 3 years now. So I still love the sessions. I still,
Aye.
even though that I've had to maybe take a back seat just now,
Aye.
and coaches that have been helping me who do a great job. But I still love the kids. It's brilliant. It's a really good thing, and I loved every single minute of it. But as I say, when you start to get back into the professional side of it,
Aye.
then you get that wee feeling back. You want a wee bit more, and
Aye.
you become quite ambitious. And as I say, that's probably the point that I'm at just now.
Well, that's what. So we're in for a hat trick back to Rangers again.
I know.
I think it's just destiny, mate.
I know.
I think you're just destined to be there.
But again, it's a weird thing because again, I did feel really uncomfortable at the beginning. I don't know. Somebody, is it imposter syndrome? Somebody called it. You feel like, oh,
aye, 100%.
What am I doing in here?
How did you get asked back? What was the?
I obviously done Rangers TV stuff. I was doing a bit of that side of it, and I met the head of academy, and I'd been speaking to him. To be fair, they invited me in. I watched under 18 sessions and all that kind of stuff, just because I'm local as well.
Aye.
So I'd kind of been in and about watching sessions and speaking to the head of academy, and then I was working for Dundee United as opposition analysis. So I was going to games and writing reports and all that kind of stuff, and it was all right. But again, I was meeting the head of academy at games because maybe Rangers had young boys out on loan in the Championship, and then I was initially supposed to go in just before COVID hit, and then it just kind of killed everything for a wee period. But then I went in when I could, and it was back with under 9s and 10s, and then I've done 13s, 14s, 15s, 16s. Now I'm up to the 18s. So I've kind of worked with all the age groups right through. So just through meeting basically the head academy at games and having conversations and speaking to different people. So
enjoying it.
I love it. I love it. As I say, this is me. I think I'm now in full time. I think it's me maybe 3 weeks.
Aye.
I started one day and my missus came in with COVID, so I had to miss like 10 days after that. So it wasn't a great start. And obviously COVID's still disrupting things slightly, so that's another challenge that we're having to deal with. But I'm loving it. I think I've been in maybe 2 full weeks now, 3 full weeks, so I'm starting to get to grips with the whole thing.
I was going to say, because it's kind of full circle for you, because you were in that position that these kids are in, 17, 18 now, and do you see the kind of similarities for when you were?
There is similarities, and again, you've been through so many of the things that they've been through. I thought I had this impression that we're in everything that they're going through. I've done it, I've seen it. But then you get COVID, and I never had to deal with any of this. So again, that's a tough one for them. They ask you questions sometimes, and you don't know the answer. You don't know. But again, even having that experience of what they've been through, it might not be the answer that they're looking for, even though I've been through it. So I'll never ever, when I was here, it was like this. And it's hard not to think like that sometimes, but that's not the solution for some of them. So I have to pick and choose the right moments that I might need to use that experience that I've got that they might be going through, just to try and help them a wee bit. Because it'll never ever be about what happened to me, because they're different to what I was.
But you're the guy now that's setting the standards that you were finding when you first came.
And I spoke to a few the other day, and the standards that I have are just ingrained in me. Even they're probably higher than any coach that they've had before, in terms of just what I would expect to a young Rangers player. Don't get me wrong, the standards are high, but mine's I think are a wee bit higher. I'm a wee bit mad with things.
Not a bad thing.
I don't think it is a bad thing. And again, I've got that, and even though I like to I like to go on with them on stuff, but it's that finding that balance of getting on with them, but then having that bit where they still know that you've got this standard and you expect a certain level of everything for them, really.
And for kind of young guys, 14, 15 maybe, who were maybe in the position you were in at school, and that's all I can think about, what advice would you give to kids in that position who just want to go and play and want to make it as a footballer, kind of based on your experiences and you seeing kids of that age group and coaching?
I think they've still got to have that end goal, but the school thing's so important nowadays. And to be fair, I think that's one of the massive improvements in terms of academies, and see the type of education they get, the information they get, that wasn't there for me. I didn't get that, so they now get all that, and the clubs provide, or certainly Rangers provide all that for them, so they've got that there. But they have to do it. They have to have the school part, because it's so important. But they also still have to have that wee bit of ambition, that goal that they want to play for Rangers, and they have to find the balance of where it is in their life, and at what point did they do the school stuff and the football stuff. So it's hard.
Must it get, because I suppose for your experience as well, there's so many kids that come through that have got so much ability, but there's only so few that actually make it into that first team. for getting through that?
I've seen the percentages and they're no high.
Aye.
So it's hard, but again, you've still got to have that bit in you where you think or you believe it's going to be you. Because if you don't believe it, see if you turn up and you kind of play with it a wee bit, it'll never be you.
Aye.
But again, you've got to have that confidence, but you can never be arrogant, especially in there. Because again, it's so tough to make it, but you've got to have that belief.
Aye.
But it can never go past that line of belief to when it starts to become a real arrogance, because that's when you'll never make it.
And for you, obviously, I know you've just started the coaching, and I'm not want to move your jobs after 3 weeks, but would you see yourself like managing, etc. at some point? Is that part of the plan, or?
I don't know. It's questions that people ask you all the time. I'm sorry, I don't know. I just want to get better as a coach, because there's still so much that people think because you've played all your life that you know you'll be this great coach, and it doesn't work like that. There's so much stuff, honestly, people say to me, and I'm like, wow. how do you know that? Or there's so many people in there that I can learn from, and I don't know how long I'll be there. You just never know. But I just want to get better as a coach, and I feel like I'm in the best place right now to be doing that. I was at a level with my academy where I had to take the next part, and now I'm in a period where I'm just learning all the time off different people. People say things to you, and maybe just in passing in a corridor, and you're like, all right, I didn't. That's good. Because you've now got the women's first team and all that kind of stuff going on. You've got the B team and things like that. So again, I'm just learning every single day.
Could be 10 years for now. The big job.
And people will say, you're just saying that you really want to be a manager. I genuinely don't know. You just don't know.
But it is, I suppose it is. Start a kind of long learning curve in it. You just don't know where it's going to end.
And you might be a rubbish coach. You just don't. Just don't know.
I'm first dibs if you get a Rangers job. I'll get the first interview. Right, I've got a couple of wee quick fire questions for you. Best player you've played with and best player you've played against?
Best player with Barry Ferguson. He was. I spoke about him. He was
even above like your De Boers and all that. Just
they were kind of training. They were different because they were older, and sometimes they couldn't train every day. And all. He was just every single day, just relentless way winning and being the best player, and just the standards that he as a player had himself and then he put on other people was just ridiculous. Played against that night. Villarreal, Riquelme was unbelievable, and that's an easy one. But even playing in MLS, and you've got Beckhams and all the kind of guys, they were Thierry Henrys and people like that. They were again at an older point in their career, but they just had this presence about them when you're on the pitch and you're like, wow.
You're sitting thinking, fuck, they're not 22, 23.
Even when Henry, it was New York, we played New York, and he kind of drifted away out to the other side of the pitch, and I'm like, oh, thank God he's away there, because he was huge. Like, you just think he's an unbelievable. I was just looking at him going, he still felt like a wee guy next to him. So he was probably Riquelme in terms of, he was probably in his peak at that point.
He was class.
Henry and people, Beckham he scored a hat-trick against us when he played for LA Galaxy, and people were like, oh, he's passed it. He put one in for the outside his foot for like 30 yards and whipped a free kick in the top corner, and so he was still very good at even at that age.
Well, he ended up at Milan and PSG after that, didn't he?
So
fucking hell, man. We actually touched on this a wee bit earlier. What job do you think you would have done if you weren't a footballer?
Getting the idea. I think, I don't know whether this always comes into my head. The first thing I always think is a fireman. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just like, that's an easy answer, but or else there was something that in me when I was a wee boy that I wanted to be a fireman. Don't know, but that's always the first thing that comes into my head. Fireman.
Must be there for a reason, mate.
I might still do it. I don't know.
Best manager you played under?
Walter Smith.
Easily.
And people say, he never really played me, but just the way he carried himself, the way he handled people, just what a man. He's an absolute legend there, man. Just his that word presence again.
Everybody says that. It's that kind of fear factor.
Don't know how he's got it. You don't know, because people usually think presence like a big, massive, like a big physical. But again, he had that bit in him. He never done it a couple of times where he proper lost it, maybe once or twice, but you knew he had it in him. So I think, knowing that he's got it in him, you don't want to ever go there, so you know you have to be at a certain level all the time. So I think that he was miles ahead of everybody else. It wasn't just that, it was people, again, probably used to see him as this kind of old school type manager. See, tactically, some of the things he would say at half time after games, he used to sit up the stairs, which people see if a manager did that now, people would be like, but he had that bit where he had that respect that he could go and do that. And see when he came in at half time, he used to say like, what had happened in the first half, this is what's going to happen in the second half, this is what we're going to do, this is what they're going to do. And see the amount of times what he said actually happened. It was like nearly every other week. So you're like, it's far, people go, oh, you get lucky that week, but then next week he'd say it again, and you're like, how does he know that? It was incredible, an incredible man. So
undersold, because as you say, like, a lot of people used to question his tactics all the time, and you're like, you can't get lucky like that.
Nah, he was a genius pretty much. Like, honestly, the amount of times he got it right, and it wasn't just he got what we were going to do right, he got what they were going to do, maybe what subs they were going to make, or at a point in the game this is going to happen. And it was unreal.
What a man. Worst dressing down you've ever seen, or were you part of the dressing down?
I think in the youth, I think John Brown was my youth coach. And I don't really want to talk about why it happened, but he gave me one of the worst I've ever had.
Like full on.
I had the best. So I'll get the most respect for him out of probably anybody that I worked with. He taught me so much, but talk about presence. He had a real presence. He was and when he went, he proper went, and there was no holds barred. So he gave me one that I can particularly remember that was tough, and it was really tough. It wasn't just a one day thing. It was I'd done something completely out of order. You make mistakes as a young player, and he let me know, and I paid for it. But I probably came out the other side of that, and that was his whole thing. But he was one of the when he went, he seriously went.
Didn't even think about answering back. No,
I couldn't. I was trembling. I couldn't. I think I was crying after it actually. And he was a tough man. It wasn't me. It wasn't only me. It was me and another boy as well. We still talk about it to this day. So
that just shows you the effect it's had on you.
It was.
Favourite stadiums that you've played in?
Yeah, but Ibrox is the easy one. Because that's all you ever dreamed of playing there. That was the atmospheres there. Sometimes was just off the scale. But honestly, see in America, some of the stadiums were brilliant. The atmosphere at the home games, they call that Soccer City. So it's like there's sold out every week, and there's like a 10,000 waiting list for season tickets, and just a completely different. They sing the national anthem, and there's like rockets flying over the stadium, and
patriotic, but aren't they?
I loved that. See when they used to sing, so cheesy. I loved it before, especially the big games when we played Seattle, and they said that was a derby, even though it was like 600 miles or whatever. But it was because it's on the TV, and they've got somebody actually proper singing the national anthem, and the Portland fans love it, and it was just a mad experience. It was quite surreal. They're all waving their flags and all that. It's mad, but it was brilliant atmosphere. So some of the stadiums are there. Probably Portland Stadium was one of the best. It's
full entertainment there, but isn't it? It's everything's big and brilliant, and
so it'd be Ibrox, and then some of the stadiums in America. But some of the stadiums in America you would go in be half empty. But then like Portland's and Seattle's and Vancouver's, they're packed.
A lot of travelling, but as well, isn't it?
Sometimes
place to travel.
Sometimes you don't even know what time zone you're in or where you are, and
autopilot.
Just go.
Somebody gave me this one, and I'm putting you on the spot here. Your 5-a-side team of players that you've played with.
Wow.
You can absolutely put yourself in this. I'm all for that.
No, I would never put myself in it. I wasn't maybe I'm near good enough to be in it. Do you know what? Obviously Griggs is the goalie, but I love Stefan Klos. I absolutely love it. He was an unbelievable keeper. But it's got to be Ally McGregor, just because he's Ally McGregor.
Still going?
Aye, and he's he was 40 today, so he would obviously be the goalkeeper. But I love Stefan Klos. I'd love to put him in just because he's a completely different character. Defensive wise, who would I go? Who did I love? I love Davy Weir as well. I'll go with Davy Weir. I love Davy Weir. Just again, old school, no nonsense. So I go Davy Weir. Chris Boyd would be the striker, just the number 9, just because he'd scored hundreds of goals when they run about a lot. So the rest of them would have to. And I'd go Dado Purzo as well. I love Dado.
Oh man,
he's one of my favourites actually. He would be my captain. And Barry Ferguson, is that it? McGregor, Davy Weir, Barry Ferguson, Purzo, and Chris Boyd.
The moaning in that team. Jeez.
I would never ever even go on the bench. I would never want to train with them, but I would just let them go and play.
Last one. Somebody that obviously you spent a couple of years with Coist as your manager. There must be a story that you've seen him get up to, or every time I listen to TalkSport, he's got something else that he's fucking just fired out.
I don't know where he gets all these stories from. He's just that. He's one of the best characters you'll ever meet in your life. You can no speak to him for months and months, years at a time, and see when he sees you, just makes you laugh like that. Just one of the guys that's just got that people skills. I would call it. Just that personality. Stories. I don't know. Getting the idea what there was loads when he was a manager, especially when we were in the lower leagues and it was tough. I think he was always that. Try to keep that pressure away. If you should try to lighten the mood all the time just because his character, and try and keep it as happy a place to come to work, even though everybody knew it was a tough time. I think it was one recently when he was talking about, I think he was on TalkSport and he spoke about cancelling or he said he'd never done anything like that. And Chris Boyd had phoned in and says, we cancelled the Christmas night out one year. And he actually did, and he was trying to say that he never. We got beat off Queen of the South, and we were supposed to be going, I think we were going to say Manchester or Newcastle straight for the game, and that got knocked in the head. But he never ever lost it. He just calmly, that will not be happening. And that was it.
We use our sitting there like that, you could be like wind up.
We order stuff and like suit holders and that, we were ready to go. And he just kind of cancelled it. I don't know. It just made you laugh every day. Like every single day. There was something that he was winding somebody up about, or
which must have been good in that situation when things were kind of
and
quite rough.
That's why he worked so well when he was assistant as well, because he was just that go between the manager and the players, and he just had that personality just to deal with so many things. He's just such a good speaker. Even when you see him and amongst certain people, he's at a speakers night and you've got like Sir Alex Ferguson, he just steals the room. He steals the room for absolutely anybody. He's just got that, I don't know what it is, just that personality that
he's brilliant. The English fans love him now as well with the commentary and that.
But he's brilliant at it. He's unbelievable at it. But I just, again, with going back to the manager thing, it was just such a shame at that time what had happened, because I genuinely think he had the character and personality to deal with a lot, but it just comes a point where he's probably not even being a football manager, he's just dealing with other stuff.
He's more of a business rather than a manager.
Or just dealing with politics. That's probably what he was doing for 90% of the time.
Mental. Last one, who was your kind of closest pals in your career?
So when I grew up, I still speak to him. I actually spoke to him the other day. So Chris Burke, who's at Kelly just now, we kind of came through the academy at the same time. Boy Brian McLean, who's at Morton just now as well. Two of them are still playing. So we came through as like that was your youth team, and then we went into, so I still speak to them to this day. We used to hang about together all the time. If it was nights out, that's who I would be with. And then I got to the point where it was Lee McCullochs and people like that who I was really friendly with. So it's one of the ones where Chris Burke and Brian McLean are probably two I've spoke to.
The longest.
Brian McLean I've known since I was 8 or 9, just because he's the same age as me. Chris Burke was always a couple of years older than us, but just because the two kind of broke through at the same time, it was always the 2 years together. First pre-season trip, or sharing the room and all that kind of stuff. So they two are for that period, longest period. It's hard to see people. I don't see people constantly. I've played with guys that speak to people that were at the clubs like 10 clubs ago, and they keep in touch with every single. And I'm like, how can you mentally do that? It's texting everybody all the time, and I don't. That wasn't me. I was just they two, I think, and then also the Lee McCullochs and people like that who I still speak to.
Who was your kind of, obviously McCoist from a management point of view, but who was your kind of joker or crackpots in the dressing room when you were?
There's hundreds of them. Honestly, there's so many of them. Even to that, so when you first start out, you'd like there's your Boydies and people like that who were loud in the changing room. Dado, who was brilliant, he was the best character in a changing room. No bonkers, just like a big character. Like he was singing all the time and doing mad things. And then also Fernando as well, who was there, who was a character, people like him. And then towards the end, when I was like an older guy at Kelly, you'd boys like Jordan Jones in the changing room, Josh McGuinness, who were absolutely off their head as well. So there's just like there's so many there's some right characters.
Suppose you need that, but
and that's the thing, even when I was at Kelly and like Jordan Jones would do stuff for Josh McGuinness, you're like, what are they doing? But then you forget what age they are. They're just wee boys, and you've probably done the same thing as what they were. It's just, but you're just getting older and you're like, why is he doing that? And then you're thinking, I probably would have been doing the exact same. I know the exact same thing, but I'd have been finding that funny. I'd have been so there's just so many.
Love it. And for the academy aimed at its interested, how can they get in touch?
Just social media, the usual stuff.
Just drop you a wee message.
I'm actually it's just so busy. It's like people say, give your academy a plug and things like that. It's so busy. It's I'm fortunate enough to have a really good bunch of kids and their parents that are willing to bring them. And as I say, it's been 3-4 years now I've been doing it. So still enjoy every single minute of it. So
brilliant. Love it, mate. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been amazing.
No worries, mate.
Good education there. Love it. Thank you.
No worries. Top man.